Again, the noises you may be hearing on our live stream are actually coming from SpaceX's microphones out at the launch pad, picking up some of the vents and wind noise at Pad 39A as propellant loading is continuing. We want to thank NASA and SpaceX for providing us access to these camera views and audio from the launch pad. Now 23 minutes, 35 seconds and counting here at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Here's a look at a graphic provided by NASA on the cargo complement on board this mission. This mission is known as CRS-28. It's the 28th SpaceX mission under the company's commercial resupply services contract with SpaceX, or with NASA rather. This mission has a total cargo load of 7,284 pounds, or a little more than 3.3 metric tons. Inside the pressurized compartment of the Dragon spacecraft are about 4,300 pounds of fresh food and experiments that will be unpacked by the crew on board the space station. And then outside on the external cargo bay, the trunk, nearly 3,000 pounds of cargo. That cargo is made up of the 2 rollout solar arrays, or International Space Station Rollout Solar Arrays, or IROSA units. These solar arrays will be installed on a pair of spacewalks later this month by astronauts Steve Bowen and Woody Hoberg, who are part of the long-duration crew on the space station. The expedition
Dragon is in countdown. Falcon 9 is in startup. Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
You are looking live at Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. In just over 20 minutes, this Falcon 9 rocket will lift off, carrying the 28th commercial resupply services mission from both NASA and SpaceX to the International Space Station. Good morning and welcome to live coverage of the CRS-28 launch. I'm NASA's Jasmine Hopkins. Fueling of the Falcon 9 began about 15 minutes ago, and we're counting down to an instantaneous launch at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time. This mission will deliver about 7,000 pounds of science, supplies, and equipment to the space station. And these missions help NASA and our partners continue research to better our life right here on Earth and help us as we explore deep space. Let's go now to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, where Zachary Lupin is standing by to tell us more about the vehicle supporting today's mission. Zach?
Thanks, Jasmine. Hello, everyone. My name is Zachary Lupin, and I'm an avionics reliability engineer here at SpaceX. And it's great to be covering today's mission in partnership with NASA. On your screen right now is a live view of SpaceX's 2-stage Falcon 9 rocket with our Dragon spacecraft at the very top. Dragon is one of the few vehicles that can deliver significant cargo to the space station and the only vehicle that can deliver cargo from it. And to date, Dragon has visited the station 37 times and transported 280,000 pounds of cargo back and forth from the orbiting laboratory. Below Dragon is our Falcon 9 vehicle, which is actually 2 rockets in one. The lower part, also the largest part of the rocket, is called the first stage. It has 9 Merlin 1D engines, which accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere and into various orbits in space. At the top of the first stage is the black inner stage, and above that is the Falcon 9 second stage. Now, the 2 stages will separate about 2.5 minutes into flight, and then the second stage will ignite its single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine, which is the 10th engine on the rocket, to carry Dragon to its desired orbit. Now, during today's mission, you will notice a shorter nozzle attached to our second stage. We are flying a shorter nozzle when we don't need as much performance to get payloads to their final destination. Now, for those of you following along, today marks SpaceX's 38th launch this year, 4th Dragon flight in 2023, and 237th mission overall. Now, Falcon 9 and Dragon were both designed with pre-flight in mind, and the vehicle hardware is built to support multiple missions with minimal refurbishment. Today's Dragon is flying for its 4th time and also marks SpaceX's 20th reuse of the vehicle. And the Falcon 9 first stage is flying for its 5th time, and we plan to recover and fly both the vehicle and the spacecraft again in the future. So far, we've reflown 170 first stages, including both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, and we're planning to recover this booster on our drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas, which is currently stationed off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. And if successful, this will mark the 198th recovery of an orbital-class rocket. Now, as the clock ticks closer to T0, let's head over to NASA's Megan Cruz at Cape Canaveral to talk about today's weather. Megan?
Thank you, Zach, and good morning, everyone. Welcome into Hangar AE at nearby Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This is where I can monitor the launch team as they take us through today's countdown. So far, hearing a lot of good things over the nets. The vehicle is healthy, the team working no issues, the range is green, meaning our path from here to the International Space Station is clear and safe, and the weather, which has been the issue all weekend, forcing the team to stand down Saturday and Sunday attempts. Today, we are 80% go. You can see those watch items on the bottom left of your screen. Launch Weather Officer Arlena Moses will be monitoring a few showers she expects to move into the area during launch. And I know some of you out there, you might be thinking it seems a little windy out here, but those winds are well below any concerns for launch. And as for the weather around the booster recovery area yesterday, high seas kept us from launching, but today, check out this live look from SpaceX's drone ship out in the Atlantic. Conditions are still a little rough out there, but better than yesterday, hence again that 80% go for launch in just about 17 minutes. So right now, SpaceX is fueling Falcon 9 RP-1, or rocket-grade kerosene load, is complete. Super-chilled liquid oxygen is being loaded into the first and second stage. You see those white clouds, completely normal. That's some of the liquid oxygen venting off. SpaceX vents off some of that LOX to maintain the right pressure in the tanks. And those clouds form when the liquid oxygen makes contact with Florida's humid air. Our instantaneous launch opportunity today, 11:47 and 0 seconds Eastern Time, if we want to dock with the International Space Station on Tuesday, June 6th. For more on that, let's head over to Shaniqua Vrain inside NASA's Mission Control Center.
Thanks, Megan, and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room. I am Shaniqua Vrain, live at the Johnson Space Center here in Houston, Texas. The team of flight controllers in Mission Control Houston today is being led by Flight Director Scott Stover. Teams here in Mission Control will really jump into action tomorrow night into early Tuesday morning as Cargo Dragon approaches the International Space Station. There are currently 7 crew members living and working aboard the station. Expedition 69 consists of NASA astronaut Frank Rubio, Dmitry Petelin of Roscosmos, Sultan Anayati from the United Arab Emirates, Woody Hoberg and Stephen Bowen of NASA, Andrei Fedyayev, and Commander Sergei Prokopyev of Roscosmos. As Cargo Dragon approaches the International Space Station in the morning hours of June 6, NASA astronauts Frank Rubio and Woody Hoberg will be monitoring the arrival from the station's cupola. Cargo Dragon will remain attached to the International Space Station, its zenith port of the Harmony module, for about 1 month, being one of 2 Dragons joining Crew Dragon Endeavour before being packed up with critical science and supplies that will splash down off the coast of Florida for that science to be analyzed back here on Earth. Everything is still a go from the Mission Control Center here in Houston, and we're looking forward to welcoming another Dragon to the International Space Station. So for now, we'll head back out to Kennedy. Jasmine?
Thank you, Shaniqua. Now we are about T-minus 14 minutes and counting from liftoff of CRS-28, so let's talk about the science. New experiments will soon arrive on the space station. Thunderstorm observation equipment could improve research on Earth's climate and weather. And astronauts will be growing a second generation of plant seeds in space to see if gene changes transfer to future generations. And those are just some of the experiments joining the hundreds of ongoing investigations already aboard the orbiting lab. This mission will also increase power supply on the station, delivering the third set of roll-out solar arrays, also known as IROSAs. After being installed on upcoming spacewalks, the arrays will roll out into position, boosting power on the station by up to 30%. Now, across the country, NASA and our partners are making small steps and giant leaps in preparation for the Artemis II crewed mission around the moon. So let's take a look at our Artemis Moon Minute. All 5 major structures of the Space Launch System rocket's core stage have now been fully integrated at the Michoud Assembly Facility in Louisiana. The engine section is the most complex and intricate part of the core stage that powers the Artemis missions to the moon. RS-25 engine testing is underway at Stennis Space Center near Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. This test is part of a 12-test series that will certify the new design for crewed Artemis missions. The engine ran for its full planned 720 seconds, the longest duration to date. At Kennedy Space Center in Florida, technicians have been testing the solar array wings for the Artemis II service module. Orion will have 4 solar wings, drawing in 11 kilowatts of power from the sun. Some of the avionics for Artemis II have already been to space. Technicians finished cleaning and removing avionics on the Artemis I crew module, which will be used on the Orion capsule for Artemis II in 2024. Now we are at T-minus 12 minutes and counting from the liftoff of the 28th Commercial Resupply Services mission from both NASA and SpaceX to the International Space Station. Let's bring back Zach now to tell us more about Dragon's flight history. Zach?
Thanks, Jasmine. For those of you following along, you'll know that it's already been a very busy year and couple of weeks for Dragon vehicles at the International Space Station. CRS-28 marks SpaceX's 4th Dragon mission of 2023, following the launches of Crew 6, CRS-27, and AX-2. The Dragon spacecraft supporting today's mission will be joining Crew 6 and Dragon Endeavour, which have been on station since March. Now, in order to make room for AX-2 and CRS-28 at the Harmony Zenith port on the ISS, the 4 members of Crew 6 underwent a port relocation on May 6th. And put another way, Dragon moved parking spots to make room for the incoming Dragons. A few weeks later, on Sunday, May 21st, Dragon and the crew of AX-2 lifted off from historic Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center and arrived at station about 15.5 hours later. And this is Dragon's fastest launch to docking time for a human spaceflight mission. After 8 days of living and conducting research on the space station, Dragon Freedom undocked from the orbiting laboratory and returned the AX-2 crew back to planet Earth off the coast of Florida at 11:04 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, May 30th. And this made room for the Dragon vehicle supporting today's mission. From the beginning, Dragon was designed to fly cargo and humans to and from space. And since Dragon's first visit to the space station in May 2012, we've come a long way. In that time, as I mentioned earlier, Dragon has visited the ISS 37 times, and 9 of those missions carried crew. In fact, the first time Dragon flew people was just about 3 years ago with SpaceX and NASA's Demo 2 mission to the space station. NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley took the first flight on Dragon on May 30th, 2020, returning human spaceflight capabilities to the United States for the first time since the space shuttle retired in 2011. The launch of Demo 2 also marked the first time in history that a commercial company successfully took astronauts to orbit. And since then, SpaceX has launched a total of 10 human spaceflight missions to space. And to help enable greater flexibility for future Dragon missions, SpaceX is preparing our neighboring pad, Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, to support both cargo and crew missions. As we fly more and more people to and from space, human spaceflight becomes more accessible and creates more opportunities for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization. And now I'll turn it back to Jasmine at KSC to take a look at one of the payloads flying on today's mission. Jasmine?
Thank you, Zach. One experiment on CRS-28 could be used to predict your risk for certain diseases, aging, and how our bodies heal. Earlier this week, I got the chance to speak with the brains behind Genes in Space 10. Joining us now is Pristine Anwaha, a high school student from East Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Welcome, Pristine.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, happy to have you here. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're feeling a high school student with your experiment heading to the International Space Station?
It's honestly a dream come true. This idea started off originally in my head, and now it's going to be a reality pretty soon, so I'm really excited.
Of course, we love that excitement, Pristine, and we cannot wait to see your dreams realized. Can you break down what is the Genes in Space 10 experiment?
The experiment involved telomeres, and these are the repetitive sequences that cap the ends of our chromosomes. On Earth, telomeres normally shorten as we age, but for astronauts in space, they actually appear to get longer. And so with that, I developed an experiment to see if that process could be linked to the activity of stem cells. Now, in the development of that experiment, something really important was measuring telomere length. But it turns out that isn't something that can really be done on the ISS. Instead, experiments involving DNA length measurement need to be sent down to Earth, and that costs time and resources. So with that, the Genes in Space team and I got thinking, what if we developed an experiment that could help address that? And so we developed an experiment that will allow astronauts on the ISS to detect a four-fold difference in DNA length. And so with that, it opens the door up for more kinds of research to be done on the ISS, such as into genetic monitoring, because being in space makes you more prone to genetic mutations. So that's something that can help with that. Also opens the door up for more research into telomeres to be done, and even broader.
Christine, that is so exciting. And your experiment was chosen out of over 600 applications. So what advice do you have for students who are also interested in this opportunity?
Yeah, I would just encourage other students to just explore their passions in space biology and pursue it as best as you can. That's what I did, and it led me to where I am here.
Exactly. Very excited to have you here. And tell me, what are your plans after high school? I mean, you've got some great things on the horizon, right?
Yeah, so in the fall, I'll be headed off to UNC Chapel Hill. I'm planning on studying either biology or biochemistry, and I'm really excited to get more involved with biological research in the future, especially space biology.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining us today, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Pristine for speaking with us. And she is not the only student experiment going up on CRS-28. STEM engagement is very important to us here at NASA for the future of the Artemis generation. All right, now we are just about 7 minutes and counting until liftoff of CRS-28. So let's bring back Megan here on Florida's Space Coast and Zach live at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, to walk us through the final moments of the countdown. Take it away.
Thanks, Jasmine. It's T-minus 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and the SpaceX team is currently working no significant issues, and the vehicle is healthy. Weather is currently 80% go, and the range is ready to support today's mission. At this point, Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1 fuel, is completely loaded on the second stage and nearly complete on the first stage. Liquid oxygen, or LOX loading, is currently underway on both stages and will complete at the T-minus 2 minutes mark to launch. We're also loading helium gas into both stages. Falcon 9 uses helium as a pressurant to backfill the propellant tanks as LOX and RP1 are consumed by the Merlin engines during ascent. Helium load began before the broadcast went live and will continue to top off until about a minute and a half before launch.
And about 40 seconds ago, SpaceX performed the engine chill. That's when the team flowed a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen into the Merlin engine's turbopumps. They're basically prepping the propulsion system for the full flow of liquid oxygen. By doing this, they avoid a thermal shock to the system, ensuring engine startup
Stage 1
goes
fuel
well.
load is complete.
And you heard that call out for stage 1 fuel load complete. Now, Dragon also began its startup sequence at T-minus 35 minutes when it coordinated timing with Falcon 9. The spacecraft is currently undergoing vehicle health checks. It will enter terminal count at T-minus 5 minutes, with the next big step just a minute before liftoff, when Dragon will transition to internal power.
Now, you may have noticed those white clouds around the vehicle. Those are completely normal. They are chilled gas above the LOX tank liquid surface that we vent overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. And when that gas comes out into contact with the warm, humid Florida air, the air condenses into clouds and water. Now,
Here at the eye, Bob,
for now, we should see the
count. Falcon 9 tanks are
the clamp
pressurizing
arms
for
opening
strongback
on the
retract.
transporter erector.
Dragon is internal
The
count and
transporter erector
internal
or
power.
The transporter erector, or TE, is used for vehicle rollout and to route propellants and electrical power to the vehicle in preparation for launch. And once those clamp arms have fully opened, the TE will then retract away from the rocket in preparation for liftoff.
We have a hot mic on the countdown net. All parties check your key panels.
Strongback lower has started.
We should see those clamp arms opening in about 15 seconds from now. Now those clamp arms are located just below the trunk of the vehicle, which is beneath the Dragon spacecraft. And there you can see those clamp arms beginning to open around the booster. Now in these last few minutes before T0, Falcon 9 is performing final health checks on its primary communications, avionics, and propulsion systems in preparation for flight. And we may hear callouts that engines are sufficiently chilled as we get a little closer to liftoff. Clamp arms should be fully open, and the transporter erector, that strongback, is going to recline away from the rocket. Now you may have noticed in some of these shots, the Falcon 9 booster supporting today's mission is covered in quite a bit of soot, and that is because it previously supported NASA Crew 5, GPS 3, Space Vehicle 6, Inmarsat 6 F2, and 1 Starlink mission. And you can see that strongback slowly reclining away from the vehicle.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
This launch will bring about 7,000 pounds of hardware, crew supplies, and science to the space station. One research project will study the effects of space on human DNA. Another will study the effects on plant DNA. Findings from both could help us advance things here on Earth, but also prepare us for future, farther missions into space. And Dragon will be docked to the space station for about a month before returning home. Now checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators are now underway. This is often referred to as an engine wiggle test. This is when SpaceX moves the thrust nozzle slightly to make sure the guidance hardware is ready for flight. SpaceX will do the exact same test on the first stage engines, but that happens just seconds before ignition.
Now, Dragon is also performing its final health checks to make sure all of the vehicle's primary systems are ready
Stage
for its
2 LOX
rendezvous
load is
with the
complete.
International Space Station.
Dragon is
And there's that
auto
call out
idle.
that stage 2 LOX loading is complete. That wraps up propellant loading for both stages of the Falcon 9. And as I mentioned earlier, you may have seen those white clouds around the vehicle.
Ground gas
Those
closeout.
clouds you see are the chilled gas above the LOX tank liquid surface that we vent overboard. And when that gas comes out in contact with the warm Florida air, the air condenses into clouds and water.
Now Dragon is about to transition into internal power. Also Falcon 9 computers will then enter startup mode, which is when the Falcon 9 flight computers take control of the countdown, guiding the rocket through the last seconds before liftoff. We should hear a call out about startup shortly.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Dragon is in countdown.
Both stages are now pressurizing for launch. At T-minus 45 seconds, we'll hear the SpaceX launch director verify go for launch.
Go for launch.
There you go. And at launch, the International Space Station will be flying 260 miles over the North Atlantic, south of St. John's, Newfoundland.
T-minus 30 seconds. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition, engines full power, and liftoff of CRS-28. Go Falcon, go Dragon.
Liftoff of about 7,000 pounds of science and cargo, including a new pair of solar arrays to boost power on the space station.
At T plus 40 seconds, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from historic Launch Complex 39A in Florida. And we're now coming up on max Q in about 20 seconds from now. And this is the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will go through during its flight.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
And there's that call out that Falcon 9 is supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
And there you heard the call out for max Q. Coming up next are 3 events back to back, the first of which is main engine cutoff, or MECO, and this is when all 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage shut down. After those 9 engines shut down, the first and second stages will separate, and this is also called out over the nets as stage separation. From there, the second stage will ignite its Merlin vacuum engine to boost Dragon to low Earth orbit during SES, or second engine start 1. And this whole sequence takes about 15 seconds. Should be expecting that call out for main engine cutoff in about 40 seconds from now. Some amazing views of our Falcon 9 vehicle as it takes our Dragon spacecraft to orbit. And in just about 10 seconds, we should see that main engine cut off.
MECO. Stage separation. INVAC ignition.
And there you heard those callouts and probably saw on your screen, main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and then second engine start 1. As I mentioned earlier, we're flying an MVAC nozzle, a shortened MVAC nozzle on our second stage. If you're just tuning in, you're watching a live webcast for the 28th commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station for NASA. This is SpaceX's 38th mission for 2023 and the 4th Dragon flight to the International Space Station this year. We lifted off from Kennedy Space Center's historic Launch Complex 39A just about 3.5 minutes ago. Now on your screen, on the left side, you can see our Falcon 9 first stage, which is going to descend back towards Earth, and the second stage on the right side of your screen, which is carrying the Dragon spacecraft. Now, as a reminder, today's mission marks the 5th flight for this Falcon 9 booster. Falcon 9 booster, which previously supported the Crew 5, GPS 3 Space Vehicle 6, Inmarsat 6F2, and 1 Starlink mission. In order to make its way back to our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, the Falcon 9 first stage has 2 more burns to execute. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the Merlin engines will reignite. This helps slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The entry burn is followed by the landing burn, and this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship. Now, occasionally with the Falcon 9 first stage on the left side of your screen, you may see some small white puffs, and those are nitrogen gas bursts that are used for attitude control. You can also see there on your screen a pair of the hypersonic grid fins. Falcon 9 is equipped with 4 of these grid fins, which are comprised of titanium, and they are positioned near the top of the first stage. Once in the atmosphere, stage 1 is only using the grid fins for steering as it makes its return to Earth. And these grid fins orient the rocket during re-entry and guide the rocket during its descent. Now, the Falcon 9 first stage has 9 Merlin 1D engines, and each engine generates about 192,000 pounds of thrust. On the second stage is the MVAC engine, which has a slightly wider nozzle, and the vacuum engine generates about 203,000 pounds of thrust. Next major milestone is going to be the first stage entry burn, which will take place just over a minute from now. There you can see an amazing view of our stage 2 with its shortened MVAC nozzle. The Falcon 9 first stage, which is not currently on your screen, has reached apogee and is now beginning its descent back towards Earth. The second stage is continuing to take our Dragon spacecraft to orbit. And we should see that first stage entry burn begin in about 15 seconds from now on the left side of your screen.
Stage 1, FTS has safed. Stage 1 entry burn.
The second stage on the right side of your screen. And there's that call out for stage 1 entry burn startup on the left side of your screen. The second stage is continuing to take our Dragon spacecraft to orbit. Now again, the entry burn is the first of 2 burns that the Falcon 9 booster performs before landing on our drone ship.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And there's that confirmation of stage 1 entry burn shutdown. As we get closer to first stage landing, it's good to note that the Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs made of state-of-the-art carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb. These landing legs are placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket and deployed just prior to landing. And if successful, this landing will mark the 198th time that we've recovered a first stage booster, including both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy missions. We are about 25 seconds away from that landing burn beginning.
Stage 1 transonic.
Now, as the rocket descends through the Earth's atmosphere, this really puts deceleration into perspective. In the span of less than a minute, we'll have reduced from twice the speed of a jet all the way down to 0 as the rocket lands. And as Falcon lands, we may also hear a call out that the second engine will shut off around the same time.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And there you have it. The Falcon 9 first stage that supported today's mission has landed for its 5th time, having previously supported Crew 5, GPS 3, Space Vehicle 6, Inmarsat 6F2, and a Starlink mission. Today's landing also marks the 198th successful landing for an orbital class rocket. You may have also heard confirmation of good orbit.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland.
At T plus 9 minutes and 30 seconds into the mission, we are coming up on the last major task for Stage 2, commanding separation of Dragon a couple minutes from now. And we expect to have video of Dragon separation from the top of the second stage, which looks into the trunk. CRS-28 will be joining the Crew 6 vehicle currently on orbit, so we'll be back to having 2 Dragon spacecraft. 2 Dragon spacecraft docked at the International Space Station. As for cargo, today we will be delivering more than 7,000 pounds of science, research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware to the orbital laboratory and its crew. To date, SpaceX has sent and brought back over 280,000 pounds of crew and cargo to and from the space station. And we should be seeing Dragon separation about a minute and a half from now. As a reminder, this is the 4th flight for this Dragon capsule, having previously supported CRS-21, CRS-23, and CRS-25 to the space station. Today's flight also marks the 20th reuse of a Dragon vehicle overall. Now, Dragon has 16 Draco thrusters on board, each with the capability to deliver 90 pounds of force. There are 4 pairs of 3 thrusters spaced evenly around the capsule, as well as 4 forward bulkhead thrusters underneath the nose cone. Now, notably, today's Dragon does not have Super Draco thrusters, seats, or life support systems, as it's not carrying crew. And this saves on weight and space, and also allows for a faster refurbishment time. While initial designs of Dragon carried solar arrays extended outward from the trunk, the cylindrical structure located directly behind the Dragon capsule, the current Dragon has these arrays fixed directly to the trunk. And you may see at some point both a light and a dark side of the trunk, and that dark side is actually those solar panels, while the light side is a radiator to help cool the spacecraft. And speaking of solar panels, you can see on your screen right now the solar panels that we will install on the International Space Station. Once the Dragon capsule reaches the ISS, it will be able to autonomously dock using its navigation sensors, centerline camera, and light detection and ranging or LiDAR equipment. And there you can see on your screen Dragon separating from the 2nd stage. Well, that's going to do it for me here in Hawthorne. The next milestone coming up is the Dragon nose cone opening sequence, which protects the docking ring and navigational sensors. And I'll toss it over to Shaniqua in Houston to talk